I'm Jonathan Moore. Many years ago, a young man from the tiny town of Östhammar in Sweden went on a journey to America to follow his dream and become an actor. Now, 40 years later, Bo Brundin returned to his birthplace. He was highly successful as an actor, both on stage, on screen and cinema, and on television, and not to mention radio. Bo did it all. And today he's going to tell us about some of his wonderful adventures and some of the great people he met on his journey.
Amazing to come back after all this time. And oh, there's a kitty cat.
Even the cat was waiting for you to be here. So this is your house.
Yeah,
Was your house, not
it's
now.
the old house. This is
And
where I left.
You were a child here.
I was 20 years old when I left from here, actually.
And that's a long
I
time
grew
ago.
up. Yeah, that's.
And the cat is still waiting for you to come home.
Oh,
Isn't
look
that
at
great?
that! Yeah.
So this is it, and this is where you left from to go to America.
That's right. That's
and now you're back.
Yep.
And you've come full circle in your life.
That's right.
But
That's right.
your life is not finished, and you're going to keep acting for a long, long time.
Oh yeah, I should hope so.
So this is a new beginning in some
Yeah,
ways.
yeah.
The rebirth. The rebirth of Bo Brundin. That's going to do it for you.
And
which
this
is
was the
nice.
room where we were at, right up there.
Right over
That's
there.
that little room. Yeah. My father had the office on the top.
So many families lived here too, other families.
Yeah, there were several families. The postmaster's family, my father's assistant, another policeman lived here in the middle
So your father
story.
was a policeman?
Yeah, he was head of the police.
Whoa! Be careful of this one.
He was a marshal.
Marshal. What a lovely spot to grow up in.
Oh, this is
Much
wonderful.
better than the city.
Yeah, this was great here. It was
But
really, it was
it
wonderful.
must have been a hell of a shock for you to go to New York from here.
No, that was really exciting, I think.
But,
Go
yeah,
to
yeah.
New York. I mean, it's so different. I
Oh,
mean, it's-
absolutely. I mean, but a
This
culture
is, but
shock.
I use a lot of this when I do Chekhov, you know, because on the estate up here where I was all the summers, I did Chekhov. I did Uncle Vanya, the first production ever done
Wow.
in New York. I did the early version called The Wood Demon. I played Vanya.
Oh.
And then I remembered these places where I grew up and when we played croquet and stuff like that, you know, and it was up here. So it was like recalling that time.
So it
You
was
know.
all very valuable to your being an actor.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Everything you used.
Yeah,
the
everything. I
feeling.
use my childhood. I use a lot of trauma in our lives to
yeah.
do for, you know,
So it
for
was-
villains and stuff like. And when I get thrown into jail, I use a lot of memories that I had when I was a kid. Well, this is where it started. This is where I got to, and I was carrying my bag.
And you went from here to what, Stockholm?
Yeah, to Bromma, because Arlanda didn't exist. From Bromma to Torslanda in Gothenburg. And there was a lady who sat next to me, and I told her that I had never flown before and I was very scared, and she held my hand.
Which that
She
happened
was a
to
very,
me.
very famous lady.
Really?
Katja of Sweden, yeah,
Really?
designer. Yeah, I want to see if I can find her. She's in her 80s now, I think.
Wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I flew from Torslanda to Copenhagen, and then Copenhagen to London, and London
God.
to Prestwick in Scotland. And from Prestwick, it was nighttime, and I took off with a 4-engine propeller plane. There were no jet
yeah.
planes then, and it took 13 hours non-stop
Wow.
to Gander in Newfoundland, and then from Gander was a plane that took me to New York, and that took 5 hours.
It's amazing, isn't it?
And it was called Idlewild then. You know, Kennedy came later.
Of course.
But that was 1958 that I went out. And it was like the beginning of a new era in New York. It was fantastic because it was like America was different.
And the beginning of a new life for you.
Yeah.
Total
No.
amazing
Oh,
life.
yeah.
Did you ever think that from this little place you would end up in Hollywood?
No.
Oh, it must have been quite a cultural shock from Sweden to go to New York.
It was very, very different.
But you weren't scared, you just felt this is a new experience and I like
Yeah, it was a good experience. And the first place I stayed in was in Jackson Heights, which is outside. It's Queens, New York, you know. So it's a little outside. And then I moved into Manhattan, and that was a fabulous place.
yeah.
I mean,
The story is Garbo never played a Swede. Always Germans and Russians and people. You never played a Swede.
one
One.
role in all these years, and I've done about 40 television shows and 15 movies. One Swedish part. I played a Swedish miner from the Embarcadero in San Francisco. A poor guy, he gets killed. Anyway, I got to sing my own song.
Did you?
That was a little song that my grandmother sang when I was little. And I was sitting by my cabin up here in the mountains, so I said, well, I should be doing something. And they said, well, do what you want. And I said, oh, I have this little song my grandmother used to sing. So I sat there, I sat with this big hat on, you know, and I said, och fingerringen I tummehandsken, tre vackra flickor ut I månasken. Tre vackra flickor ut I månasken.
What sort of places did you live
I
in?
lived in Hell's Kitchen. The actor who lived above me was Robert Duvall.
Yes.
He had an apartment, he was paying like 25 a month. I had an apartment and the girl I was renting from, she paid 18 a month.
Robert Duvall and Dustin Hoffman also were roommates for a while.
Yeah, they were. He was very funny. Last time I saw him, because I knew him, was when he did All the President's Man. And Robert Redford took me up to the film studio at Burbank and he said, Bo, look, I've recreated the total office space of the Washington Post. And Dustin was there and he knew, my wife knows Dustin, Michael knows Dustin, I knew Dustin. And Michael was smoking a cigarette and suddenly Dustin came over and he like this, and he took the ashes of Michael's cigarette and he put it on his jacket for the character. Yeah, the ashes. It was such a wonderful kind of detail.
He sounds like a nice man.
Oh, he's a very nice man. He gave up acting, you know. He tried for 6.5 years. And when I met him in Manhattan, I was staying at the Dakota for a while, a short while. I had a girlfriend whose parents had an extra apartment there, which was
Not a good
fabulous.
place for magicians. They just
Yeah.
not a good
Jack
place.
Palance
I can't
lived
even
there.
say it.
Who was it? Boris Karloff
Yeah.
was there.
But
Jack
that's where
Palance.
John Lennon was
I
murdered
know, I
outside
know.
in that hotel.
Rosemary's Baby was filmed all in the Dakota.
Yeah.
That was the fanciest address ever for me in the States. That was fabulous. It was like a castle. You know, you came into the courtyard and it was like... Anyway, Dustin had an apartment nearby and he came over and we used to do readings in the living room of Elena Karam at the Dakota. And Dustin came over and he said, Paul, he said, I gave up acting. I said, why? You're a good actor. He says, I can't make any headway here, you know, there's no way. Well, the next time I saw him, he was doing Midnight Cowboy. And I said, hey, what happened? He said, I did a little Broadway play called A. And he was at Actors Studio and Mike Nichols saw him and wanted him for The Graduate. And he went in for the audition for The Graduate and he did fucked up everything. He screwed up everything. And that's exactly what Mike Nichols wanted. And that was the beginning of his career.
Isn't that a great story?
All the people that I studied with, the classes, you saw some wonderful people.
And the
You'll never know about them
a
here.
minute amount of them actually get to do something great, even though they are great.
There's so much luck involved.
Yeah.
I mean, my whole career is based on incredible stuff. Jonathan, I was doing a film with Sean Connery called Meteor, about a meteor that's coming towards Earth. And Sean Connery found out I was Swedish and he says, oh, Bo, he says, most of my neighbors in Marbella are Swedish. Oh, I said, really? I said, well, good luck for you. I said, I'm thinking, Sean, maybe putting in a swimming pool. And he says, Bo, he says, if you're putting in a swimming pool, he says, make sure that you have black tiles. Black tiles. I said, Sean, why would I have black tiles? He says, because you see, the black tiles, they reflect the heat. And you don't have to switch on the electricity and you get the heat for free. And I said, Sean, you're from Scotland, aren't you? He says, oh, yes, I'm from Scotland.
Great.
It's a true story. My Sean Connery story. In Hollywood, in America, keep pushing so fucking hard. I mean, you got to get the right representation, you got to get the right agent, you got to get the right manager. If you don't do that, and your career starts going, it's suddenly like, hey, you're forgotten, you know.
That's line.
Yeah. And I mean, the greatest thing happened to me was I was in Amsterdam. I was doing a TV series called The Word, Irving Wallace bestseller. Brilliant thing about Jesus keeps living, you know, and his older brother has written the story and so forth. And anyway, I get this phone call from Michael, my wife calls me, and Universal calls me, and my agent, and they said, my God, Bo, Alfred Hitchcock has seen your work. He's seen Waldo Pepper, he's seen Rich Man, Poor Man, and he said, this is the greatest actor I have ever seen, and I want to use him in Finland this summer. And now we're gonna shoot a movie with Sean Connery, Liv Ullmann, and I was gonna play the other lead in it. And it was called Short Night, and they were going to shoot it, you know, next summer. And they called me and said, Mr. Brundin, would you be available to do a movie with Alfred Hitchcock this summer? He thinks you are the greatest he's ever seen. And I said, you kidding? Of course I will. Guess what happened?
What?
He keeps writing on it. He keeps writing. I'm finishing up in Amsterdam and New York with this TV series, and then I get back to Los Angeles and I call my agent, and he says, well, I said, what about the movie with Hitchcock? And they said, well, they're pushing it back on the back burner, which means they're postponing it. I said, why? Because Hitchcock is not feeling good. But he's going to work every day working on the movies. He's coming into work, so we're figuring on doing this. Well, he got the movie finished and then he died.
So you
The
killed Hitchcock.
movie is still there. Universal still has the movie.
And they never made it.
They never made it, but the way Hitchcock worked, you could get someone else to do the movie. So then I thought, well, who could I get? I get Francois Truffaut. He loved Hitchcock. I said, I get Francois Truffaut. Then I was going to approach Francois Truffaut. Then he died. I said, whoa,
Maybe
wait
we
a
shouldn't
minute.
be doing this, guys.
If Hitchcock tells me that I am the greatest actor he has ever seen, I got it done. I don't need an Oscar. Thank you very much. Hitchcock already told me.
No more jobs. I'm retired now. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
The theatre where you have
Yeah,
to go when you really are a star.
The Royal Dramatic Theatre.
And you've worked here.
I worked here, but I didn't start as an actor. I was doing the military service and I loved the theatre, so I went here and I tore tickets for 5 crowns a night in 1957.
Wow.
Yeah. Many years later, after I came back from America the first time, I was in New York 6.5 years. I came back here, and my friend Vivica Lindfors, a Swedish actress, she said, you might have a little problem because you've been in America to get work in Sweden. Because she had studied at the Royal Dramatic Theatre. She went to the theatre school here.
I met her in San Francisco.
Oh,
by
you
the way.
did?
I did.
Oh.
Very nice lady.
Yeah, she's a very good actress.
Sat in Enrico's coffee house and
Yeah.
talked a little bit of Swedish. It was quite fun.
I was at a place called the Gypsy Coffee Shop in San Francisco.
Oh, really?
And yeah, the owner's name was Zoltan Barabbas.
Oh my God.
And I was hitchhiking across America. And he said, no, you must have more than $5 in your pocket. He gave me $10. This was when I was 20 years old.
So you were going to New York?
I was going to New York, and I hitchhiked all the way across America.
Wow.
Yeah.
Couldn't do that now, they'd never see you again.
No, probably not.
No.
Probably
But
not.
this was a great place to work.
Yeah, let me show you the theater here.
A very beautiful theatre. with
Yeah.
all the statues
Oh,
and
yeah.
things outside.
Yeah.
Very ornate.
This is the Brecht play, Mother Courage and her children. And
King Lear.
King Lear, they're doing that now.
Huh.
Yeah. And
They got a lot of others.
details, yeah. And we can go in here if you want to. I got my first film in Hollywood while I was in New York, finishing up a film that I'd done all around the world, called All Around the World with Fanny Hill. It was a Swedish-based production. And I was in New York doing the sound on my own voice in the studio, and called a friend of mine, and she was up for a very big film with Robert Redford called The Great Waldo Pepper. And I read then and there in New York, and then they called me from Hollywood half a year later, said I got the part.
That's pretty good, because that was a really good movie for you. Got amazing reviews in that, right?
Yeah, I did.
People really
Yeah, it was
liked
very good. Very good. Yeah, I had Paul Newman wanted me to have an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. That was good. And it was the first take I did with Robert Redford. It was one take. They'd never done that in that movie before. So they were pleased. But there was a very good director. George Roy Hill did The Sting, did Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He got 5 Oscars for The Sting. And we were sitting in Florida. I was doing the aerial sequence after Redford has done his. I had to fly about 8 hours in a little Tiger Moth. And then they get the nominations, and he was nominated for 7 Oscars, opposite Bergman. And Bergman was nominated for Best Director, and George Roy Hill, Best Director. And George said to me, he said, "No, I have no chance opposite Bergman." I said, "Don't be too sure. George Roy Hill got the Oscar, and he deserved it. He's better than Bergman, as far as a film director, by far."
Well, we got a little clip here. We're going to show a little clip of the great Waldo Pepper. See?
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think you can handle all that?
You're Ernst Kessler, aren't you?
Yes. And your name is Brown?
I'm sorry I went on about what an expert I was on your battle.
No, no need. You probably know more about it than I do. I was there, of course, but there wasn't much time for me to study.
Well, anyway, I'm glad to be in your movie.
Oh, it's hardly mine. I am just a technical advisor. They let me do my own flying. Publicity, I suppose.
Aren't you playing yourself?
Nice to meet you.
Ernst Kessler shot down 70 planes. Now, if you were casting the part, who would you pick?
I'd pick you.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's all lies anyway, Mr. Brown.
Oh, that's... Forget the Brown stuff. My name's Waldo Pepper.
You, Waldo Pepper? You were a friend of Ezra Stiles, and you were with him in Muncie when he tried for the outside loop. You were in some trouble, yes?
Yes.
It's over now?
No.
It's very nice to meet you. Perhaps we'll have a chance to fly together, huh?
I'd like that.
Goodbye, Mr. Brown.
Goodbye.
Probably the scariest movie I've ever made. We had 3 real accidents, 3 crashes of planes on the movie. Both Robert Redford and me and Bo Svenson went on strike, so they had to stop filming for 3 weeks because it was too dangerous. The planes weren't ready. So we took a break, and then we got back to it. And the first time I flew, I had a very fine stuntman who did the flying of the plane, and the cockpit was carved out. He was sitting in front of me. Jim Appleby was his name, and the cockpit was carved out on the left side, so he was steering the plane like this, and I was sitting behind in the German uniform and just following the motions. And when we took off, the engine almost stopped before we were even off the airfield. And he barely cleared a fence. It was with this much. And we went up and started shooting at about 3,000 feet high. And the engine almost stopped up there, so he said, "Stop filming." Because he gave me the sign to roll the film, and I turned on the switch, and you have a magazine with about 4 minutes worth of film. And then the camera is mounted behind the propeller, filming straight at me, but he's actually steering the plane like this. So the first time we went up, we had to go down for a landing because the engine almost stopped. It stopped in the air almost totally at one time. And then we had to go down, and then we took a break after that because we'd had a crash an hour and a half before that and the head stuntman, Frank Tallman, was almost killed because the rudder line of a Newport broke as he was coming in for a landing at Indian Dunes. We were doing the filming right outside of Hollywood at Indian Dunes. Well, there was stuff that happened in Waldo Pepper that are absolutely unique. They could not get a stuntman to do the wing transference. You're going to see that. You're going to see the Waldo Pepper. I'll show you. They got a man who was 69 years old. He was the only wing walker left in America that did wing walking in the beginning of the century, and he did the transference in the air at 3,000 feet. He went from one plane to another one. In other words, he played Redford, going over from one plane to another.
You mean Redford didn't do it?
No,
No.
he did everything else. He did it in the air. He walked out on the wing from the cockpit. He walked out on a Jenny, out on the wing, and George Rahil, I said, well, since Redford walked out on the wing, why didn't you use more footage of him when you filmed his face? He said, Bo, he looked too scared. I mean, they got to be heroes in American movies, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Every movie.
well, no, most movies, especially Americans. That's why Waldo Pepper didn't become a very big success, because Susan Sarandon falls off the wing and dies, and Redford is no hero. So he was going to do another film. He told me about a mountaineer, a lady who was a mountain climber, and his first question was, does she survive? And they said, no, she falls off the cliff. And he says, I can't do the movie because I got to be the hero, I got to save her.
Tell me something. Margot Kidder, who became a big star, was in Waldo Pepper?
No. Yes, as a matter of fact, she was. She played Robert Redford's girlfriend, but she had a small part in that. She had a much smaller part. It was a very good part. But then, later on, I worked with her. I did the lead in a movie called Shoot the Sundown, and that was in '76. It was about 3 years later, and we shot it in New Mexico. And I played a sea captain who gives up the slave trade because he's frustrated about it, and he goes out to find the Montezuma gold. It's like the treasure of Sierra Madre.
Yeah.
Christopher Walken played a part in it, and I did the lead, and Margot Kidder played my girlfriend from England.
Yeah.
And by the way, this I got from the Navajo Indians. It's the oak symbol, the leaf, and then they wrote on it, for Bo, from Craig Carson, CC Navajo, on the back.
Yeah, nice.
It's a turquoise in silver.
Is it a good luck charm?
Yeah.
Brings you many movies.
Yeah, it's going to bring a lot of movies.
Bring a lot
It's going to
of
make you a great director and producer.
Yeah, probably will, actually. Now, what about Susan Sarandon? Did you ever work with her again? Because she's an amazingly good actress.
No, I didn't, and I never had anything to do with her in the film.
I certainly hope not.
I saved her for you.
Thank you.
This is Bo's house in Ersthammer, lovingly restored by he and his wife Michael. And it's a beautiful place, it's several hundred years old. And we can also see it's got a nice garden too, that's what's important. There's a great old barn. And I would think the barn here is probably older than the house, much older I think. Lots and lots of land.
Get away.
I did it. I didn't think I would.
So tell me about New York and the tough times. It was great. Were there really bad ones?
Oh yeah, there was a really tough time. I mean, when I decided to become an actor, my father said to me, "Well, do you think you really should be an actor?" And I said, I said, "Hey, listen, you should stand with your feet on the ground." And I answered my father. I said, "Hey, I'm standing with my legs in mud." I was starving, actually. I mean, there was one week I had spaghetti and ketchup. And the ketchup lasted for 3 days, and then I only had the spaghetti. So that's all I ate for a whole week. And then, of course, I did a lot of different jobs in New York. I guided on the Gray Line, uptown, downtown. I did all kinds of jobs. I worked in restaurants. I worked for a law firm, Cahill, Gordon, Reindel and Owl, on weekends, you know, and just to make money. And I mean, you know, I worked like 24-hour stretch doing proofreading for secretaries down there. And did a lot of other jobs. I did summer jobs, I did summer stock, you know, so there was an enormous amount of different things.
You know, eating was always a trouble when you're kind of a poor, starving actor. Did you do the same thing I did? I used to go and get 5 hot dogs for $1, or 50-cent spaghetti with a big piece of garlic bread. Did you do that?
Oh yeah, yeah. There was the Tad Steakhouse, which was on Broadway in Times Square. And they used to have steak, and it was $1.19, and it was a big steak. And it was a salad and the baked potato and garlic bread, and that was very good. That was like a special celebration. I mean, one only did that once a week. I was evicted once. I lived in the apartment below Robert Duvall, and I was renting it from a friend of mine. She was an actress. Well, I don't think she was such a friend. I was giving her $25 a month for this apartment. She was paying like 19 for it, but she never paid the money into the landlord. So one day there was a knock on the door, and there was the sheriffs, and they evicted me, and I had to move down on the street, and I brought my chairs and my books, and I sat on the street in Hell's Kitchen, 46th Street, and Duvall was upstairs, and I went up and I knocked on the door of him, and I started talking to him, and he says, "I'm too busy." He says, "Bo, I gotta move on here." He said he was an incredible disciplinarian. I mean, Robert Duvall, his father, I think, was military, and he was on things all the time. I was sort of easygoing, you know. It sort of came my way anyway. I mean, acting was good for me, and you know, Strasbourg gave me a scholarship for 6 months. I studied for free. People from the actor studio used to show up when I did scenes. I mean, I was kind of I was privileged as an actor because things went very well for me, but I never had the business sense. Like, you know, Robert Duvall had the business sense. Most actors, I mean, Hopkins had the business sense. I was competing with Hopkins in the beginning, you know, for the first part. Yeah,
Did you ever work with him or anything?
No, I never worked with him. I was going to do the Lindbergh kidnapping case, and I played the kidnapper, and then they got Hopkins in to do it from England. He'd done QB7. I was so upset.
So how did you play the baby?
When you were in New York, did you do a lot of plays?
Yeah, I did some plays. The most interesting one I did was in New York, because I did the early version of Uncle Vanya. It's called The Wood Demon. And it was a 4-act play, and it was actually a tragedy because Vanya kills himself in the 4th act. And then Moscow Art Theatre asked Chekhov to rewrite it, and it became Uncle Vanya, which is more like a comedy type of thing. But I did that at the Equity Library Theatre on Riverside Drive and 104th Street. And it was the first time it was ever done in New York, and we had a full theatre for every performance. And it was fascinating. There was a thing that happened. The girl who played Elena, her name was Sonja Svensson, and we had this incredible high scenery, the French window. And suddenly, as she was walking off in a scene of anger, fit of anger, her dress gets caught and at the bottom of this French window, and it starts swaying, and you hear the whole audience go, and she has had this fit, and my next line is something stupid, but suddenly, all of a sudden, I said, "Do you know, that woman, she talks so much, she gets stuck." And I got the whole audience started laughing because they realized I was improvising.
Went back to New York, San Francisco. You hitchhiked.
Yes, I hitchhiked across from San Francisco to New York.
Any fun things?
It took a week. Oh yeah, I had a wonderful time. I was invited to people's places. I stayed up in the mountains. I remember staying on a veranda, and they said you had to be a little careful because there are bats flying around here. And yeah, they came, man. They came. We got dark, and suddenly the black was swishing around there, you know, sleeping up on the veranda. Max von Sydow for that part, and shot that. You know, that was later on when I was in New York, because Bergman started his films and I had already left for New York. He'd done some of the early ones earlier, but I went in '58. So So yeah.
But you, as a Swedish person, were extremely lucky to get as many jobs, because I know, being English, I was always told there's not a lot of work for you, you're English. But you, luckily, got to play Germans and all kinds of strange people.
Yeah, that was the road in. So it's like, that was the beginning for me. It was like playing that German, and then of course I was typecast, because Hollywood is like, they see one part and they say, oh wow, we'll get Brandon for the German, you know. And then I got the Russian parts, and I had no problem with the Russian accent. I mean, I don't speak Russian, so when I did Meteor, I was offered the Russian part, but I said no. I said Brian Keith took that part. And he did a fairly good job with the Russian. And Natalie Wood, it was one of her last films, and her mother is Russian and she speaks some Russian. So she was able to speak Russian in that. But I said, no, I don't want to tackle that, because to speak a fake Russian that isn't good, I don't want to do that. So I took the part of Mannheim, which is a German part of a scientist. So I did the right-hand man to Sean Connery in this film. And it was in '76. And we had just bought the house in Burbank, and figuring that we'd be living right in the middle of all the Hollywood studios and stuff like that. And here I get the part at MGM, which is the furthest away studio. And then the interesting thing with Meteor, it's about a meteor that's coming towards Earth, and the Americans have rockets pointing at Russia, and Russia has rockets pointing at America. So they coordinate them and they shoot the rockets. So what I do is I save the world. My name in German is Mannheim, man's home, but I drown in the mud. So I save the earth, I save the world, but I also drown in it, because the mud comes in from the East River. And it breaks down and I sink. You know? Anyway, so that was a good one. That was like almost 6 weeks' work there. But for each job, I think in Hollywood, it was like, when's the next one? Am I going to do another one? It was almost like, I don't know. But then they came along, and it's like, and I freelanced for all that period of time, actually.
Went to Canada.
You went to Canada
I took
first.
a look at Canada and said, I'm no good for being a lumberjack.
I filmed in Vancouver in Canada. My God, it was like Sweden. Weekends. I mean, they were so drunk downtown Vancouver. It was like, you know, oh, I'm back in Sweden. That's what it felt like.
There's a little good in everybody, isn't there? I heard that you did something that no other foreign actor that I know about has done. You did something at the Smithsonian Institute that has now made you immortal. How did that come about?
It happened year 2000. It was just before we moved from the States to Sweden, back to Sweden. And it was the year of the Vikings. It was like 1,000 years ago, the Vikings came over from Europe, from Scandinavia. And I was called in to do a voiceover for, they had a cartoon that they were going to show at the Smithsonian Institution with a Viking talking to an Irish monk about the Vikings and the travel of the Vikings. And I got a call, and it came out of New York to Los Angeles. I was living in Los Angeles, and the call came to Los Angeles, and they were going to monitor it in Washington at the same time, and New York. And they wanted me to audition for it. So I went into my voiceover agent, Tischerman, and waited for the guy who was going to do the Irish monk. And he didn't show up. And I had a script for about 19 pages with this conversation. And I said to the technician, I said, could you read the thing with me? And she said, no, I can't do that. And I said, oh shucks, well, I'll have to do it myself then. So it starts out something like this. The Irish monk has been sent out by the bishop, the Irish bishop, to talk to the Vikings and find out about the Vikings. So it started out, so I had to change my voice. And what I did was, the Irish monk, I pictured him like rather small. And I pictured the Viking as a very big one. And I started out with the Irish monk, and he says, hey, tell me, Mr. Viking. He said, why did you call it Greenland? I mean, there's nothing green there. It's all ice and snow and everything. Well, I tell you, we needed to call it something else than Snowland, because nobody would ever go there. So what I did was I changed the voice. So anyway, This tape went into the guys and they listened to it and they said, oh shucks, well he could do both the parts. So I did both the parts. Yeah. Thanks to that actor never showed up to do the Irish monk, I got both the parts. I did the Irish monk talking to the Viking, and now I'm a permanent institution at the Smithsonian Institution. I'm very, very comfortable with the camera. It's almost easier for me with the film and television. I mean, film is the best, I think, as a medium. It's because you take your time and you can, it's a little more affordable as far as working. So that's not a big deal, but it doesn't matter in a sense, because once I get into a part on stage, immerse myself in it, it becomes my life. I mean, I find my identity in the parts. I mean, I am more comfortable doing this work or doing the parts than I am in my own skin in some ways, because then I know what I'm doing. It's almost like I find myself in the different parts. It's like reincarnations. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, did I do that, or did I do that thing? I've never felt that I did that in my own life.
That's not really me.
Right.
What studios did you like to work in best of all? I mean, Warner's or Paramount, or where?
I worked mostly at Universal, but I did some work at Warner Brothers. I did the Jay Leno show. I played a Swedish Santa Claus, and I had these glasses, and I had a big beard.
What would you say to young people today who would like to do what you did, who might listen to this and say, boy, that's a great life that guy had? Would you tell them to go ahead and follow their dream?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's marvelous to do. I mean, I got so much out of leaving. I left when I was 20 years old. I mean, it's a long time ago. It's 58. The world was very different, but I moved, and I didn't just go away for a vacation like most young people nowadays, or they run around the world in a year or something. I went to a place and I stayed there. I mean, New York to me was an incredible, it was the whole world. And I mean, I got so much experience from going there, and it took a while before I really got what it was all about. Like, that there is so much freedom in being with people from all over the world, and we cannot get that anywhere else but I think New York. I mean, New York to me was not USA, was not America, was the whole world.
It's where you blew the whole station.
Yes.
You actually made a film here.
Yes, that was actually a package under where I sat. Now, this TV show, it was a series. It was called The Black Circle.
Okay.
And there has never been a more frightening shot done in Swedish films than was done here.
In Centralen?
Yeah. And I was playing a bomb, a real knockout bomb, And I was sitting down on that bench down there, all the way down there, on the side. Now, when I sitting there and I'm drunk, and I was eating an apple, and then suddenly I dropped the apple down into this bag that was underneath, and I see in that bag there is a big thing in the bag. And suddenly I realized that there was a bomb, a big bomb, and it goes, pow! Oh, the whole Grand Central Station in Stockholm is exploded. And I'm up in the air, up all the way up there, and I was up in pieces, in pieces. Oh, it was tragedy. I was so drunk. But it was a good shot.
It was a good shot.
Yeah, it was a good shot.
How many times do you have to do that?
One time only.
Only one time?
Yeah, one time only.